How to configure Nginx as a reverse proxy for Jenkins. There are a few reasons why you might want to use a reverse proxy with Jenkins. One of those reasons is that you might want to offload your SSL termination to that reverse proxy. Another reason that you might want to use a reverse proxy is that you want to be able to have a single reverse proxy in front of multiple Jenkins controllers. In this video, we're going to be using Nginx as our reverse proxy. Here's today's starting point. I have a Jenkins LTS controller version 2.375.1. You'll notice that this Jenkins controller is at Jenkins:8080. I've also set up a DNS entry for Jenkins.example.com. That's what will be on the front side of our reverse proxy. So let's go ahead and go into our command prompt on our Jenkins controller, because that's where we're going to be installing Nginx. And let's go ahead and install Nginx. Now I'm running on Alma Linux 8, so my commands for this are dnf-y install Nginx. And now that the installation is complete, let's go ahead and check out the status of the process. So we'll say systemctl full status Nginx. And right now, although the service is set up, it's currently not running. So let's go ahead and start this service. So we'll say systemctl start Nginx. We'll run our status again, and now we can see that the Nginx service is running. So let's go over to our Jenkins.example.com, and we can see the landing page for Nginx. So at this point, we know that Nginx is properly serving content on port 80. Now, if for some reason when you do this, you don't see this page, you'll either need to disable Firewall D or set up firewall rules to allow port 80 traffic through to Nginx. Let's go back over to our console and let's double check a few things with Nginx. We know it's running fine, but we'll say Nginx-t. And what the lowercase t does is it's doing a configuration check. And based on this output, we know that our configuration is fine. We also already knew that because the page is already up and running. Now let's go ahead and run Nginx-t. And with -t, we see the effective Nginx configuration for this machine. If we were to go in and take a look at the Nginx conf and any files inside of Nginx conf-d, if we were to combine all those files together, that's the output for this -t. Now, fortunately, we don't have to write our Nginx configuration from scratch. If you go out to the Jenkins.io site and search for Nginx, you're going to find a page that's named Reverse Proxy Nginx. This is what we're going to start from. But there are a few changes that we're going to need to make that differ from how this configuration is set up. So let's go ahead and copy this whole section, and let's go over into our controller again, which is where Nginx is also running. We're going to cd over to etc Nginx conf-d, and we're going to create a file named jenkins.conf. And let's go ahead and paste this in, escape, and let's just save it. We'll come back and make the edits in just a moment. What I want to do before I actually go ahead and make these changes specifically for Jenkins is I want to go ahead and modify the default Nginx configuration file. So we're going to say vi/etc Nginx nginx.conf. We're going to leave everything at the top of the file as is. Now you might have to tune it in your case, but for my case, for this video, all of this is fine. What I want to do though, is I want to delete the default server that's here, that's listing currently on port 80, which we saw just a few moments ago. And I want to delete from this point all the way to the end of the file. So we'll go back up here to that section because we don't need the server configuration for port 80 and we don't need the commented out section. So I'm going to say, since I'm using VI, I'm going to say D upper G. That deletes everything, but you'll notice that it deleted that closing brace. So let's go ahead and add that back in. So now that I know my base Nginx configuration file is correct, now I'm ready to go ahead and update that boilerplate Nginx configuration for Jenkins. So I'm still in the same directory, so we'll just say vi Jenkins conf. We define a block for Jenkins. Now this Jenkins is just a name. It doesn't have anything to do with DNS at this point. We know that it's listening on localhost, or in this case 127.0.0.1 on port 8080. So that's fine, we'll leave that there. This next section is necessary to be able to support WebSocket agents. And then let's get into the server block that looks similar to the default server block. We have our listen on port 80. We have our server name as Jenkins.example.com. And again, remember that I defined a Jenkins.example.com DNS entry. We have our root. Now, this is one of the places that I'm having to make a change. When I install on Alma Linux or any of the other Fedora-based systems, the war file in those cases explodes into var cache Jenkins and not var run Jenkins. So I'm going to delete var run and I'm going to change that to var cache. I'm going to leave the access and error logs the way they are. And in fact, I'm going to leave pretty much everything else the way it is. No changes are needed. Now we get into location, and this is what makes the reverse proxy work. We set up a proxy pass to http:/Jenkins, but this Jenkins is referring to the upstream that was at the top of the file, Jenkins. So it's not referring to the DNS name Jenkins, it's referring to this Jenkins that's here as defined by upstream. Let's go back down to Jenkins, and there's quite a few of them. So let's go back down here to the HTTP, which is right here, and then the proxy redirect. So proxy pass, proxy redirect is what makes the reverse proxy work. And as we scroll down to the rest of the things, there are other headers that are necessary for making the reverse proxy work with Nginx. We'll leave all of these in place. So let's go ahead and save this file. Now that we've modified our base Nginx configuration and we've added a specific configuration for Jenkins, let's run our Nginx-t. Let's make sure the configuration files are fine. And we can see here from the output that the syntax is okay. Let's go ahead and run our Nginx with an T to see the effective configuration files. So if we go ahead and scroll back up to the output, we see our base Nginx file. Notice the last line is etc nginx confd, which is where we've put our jenkins.conf file. Notice that the default server and the commented out server for 443, those no longer show up here. We see our load modules, we see our MIME type definition, and then we see our configuration for our Jenkins controller that we set up inside of jenkins.conf. So at this point, let's go ahead and restart Nginx. So we'll say restart Nginx. So if we go ahead and go back up to our browser where we have jenkins.example.com, let's refresh this page. And what you may notice is that you may see a 502 bad gateway. If you see something like this, then that means that you're running on a system that has SELinux enabled. So at this point, I need to make changes to my SELinux configuration. Now for this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type set enforce permissive. That might be a little too permissive in your situation. And if it is, you're going to have to figure out what is the proper way to configure your SELinux configuration. In my case, it's set enforce permissive. Now, if I go back over to my bad gateway page and refresh this one more time, now we see our login page for Jenkins. Let's go ahead and log in. And then let's click on Manage Jenkins. And we're going to see an error here that it says it appears that your reverse proxy setup is broken. Now, although everything appears to be working fine, and in general it is, it's the right thing to do to go ahead and get rid of this error message. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to be taking the domain name that we have where we're loading up here, and we are going to change our Jenkins location URL. So we'll go to Manage Jenkins, Configure System, and we'll go down to the Jenkins URL section. We're going to replace what is there. Previously was Jenkins:8080, and we're going to put http jenkins.example.com/. Let's go ahead and click on Save. Notice nothing has really changed on the dashboard, but let's go back to the Manage Jenkins page, and now that error message about the reverse proxy being broken is gone. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter at CloudBees. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there's new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.